The following podcast is non-profit and is based on the IGCSE history curriculum. In this episode, we'll be discussing how the Weimar Republic survived between 1919 and 1923. But first, let's recap. After the First World War, the leader of Germany, Kaiser Wilhelm, was forced to abdicate and went into exile in the Netherlands, and a political party called the Social Democrats formed a new government. They created a new set of rules, or a constitution, that would govern the new Germany, or as it was now called, the Weimar Republic. The Weimar Republic was a democracy. This meant that it had a political system in which all adults had the right to vote. They voted in elections for politicians to represent them in the legislature, or the Reichstag, which it was called, making the laws that govern the country. The voting system that they used was called political representation. This meant that the number of places that the political parties won in the Reichstag depended on the proportion or percentage of votes that they won. For example, if the Social Democrats won 25% of the total votes cast, they would win 25% of the places or seats available in the Reichstag. As well as elections for the Reichstag, a president was also elected every 7 years. He had the power to bypass the Reichstag and create new laws for himself, but only in times of emergency. This was known as Article 48. The Weimar Republic ran into a number of problems during their leadership. In January 1919, German communists tried to overthrow the Weimar government and set up a new communist one, like the one in Russia. This is known as the Spartacist uprising. In response to this, the Weimar government asked a group of ex-soldiers, called the Freikorps, who are well armed but don't like the new government, to help crush the uprising. They have the men and weapons but are loyal to the Kaiser and want him to come back and rule Germany. Also in 1919, the leaders of the Spartacists, Rosa Luxemburg and Karl Liebknecht, were murdered. Although the Freikorps could be responsible, and they helped to crush the uprising, so they may be needed in the future, the government decided to set up an investigation into their murders and asked for the police force to arrest those responsible. In June 1919, the terms of the Treaty of Versailles were announced by the Allies. The German people were horrified by its harsh terms, so the government complained to the Allies and tried to persuade them to change some of the harshest terms of the treaty. In March 1920, the Freikorps tried to overthrow the Weimar government and set up a nationalist government in Berlin. This becomes known as the Kapp Putsch. In response to this, the government fled Berlin and asked the people of Berlin to resist the uprising by going on strike, because the Freikorps would find it difficult to control Berlin without their support. In March 1923, French soldiers invaded and occupied the German industrial area, called the Ruhr, after the Weimar government failed to pay the war reparations. The government called workers in the area to go on strike and resist the French occupation. However, they had to pay workers' wages whilst they were striking, leading to loss of industrial productivity and eventually making the country poorer. Between March and November 1923, the Weimar government printed more and more money to pay striking workers. This led to hyperinflation, meaning that the German currency had become almost worthless. Many people lost their savings, and the prices of goods increased tremendously. To solve this issue, Germany asked the USA for loans and scrapped the old currency, introducing a new, temporary one, being able to strictly limit the amount of this currency that they printed out before introducing a new currency. This temporary currency was called Reichsmarks. In November 1923, the Nazi Party tried to overthrow the government by taking control of Munich, the capital city of the southern German state of Bavaria. This becomes known as the Munich Putsch, or the Beer Hall Putsch. They were stopped when the police and army opened fire on them and tried to arrest their leader, Adolf Hitler. He was injured but managed to escape. To win the support of the army, as they are right-wing and deeply conservative, The Weimar governments got rid of local left-wing governments in areas such as Saxony in exchange for their support. However, this decreased democracy. This is the end of the podcast. Thank you for listening.